If you're like me, you get bored drinking regular plain water. I used to be addicted to sodas, so switching from extremely sugary drinks to water was a big shift. The thing that helped me the most was adding my own flavors. Now, technically sodas are flavored water with carbonation, and you can also add flavor with enhancers like Mio. But for the purposes of this video, I'm calling flavored water anything that gets its taste from more natural sources like fresh fruit, loose leaf tea, or coffee grounds. And at the end, I'll also give my take on two bottle brands that have more recently taken social media by storm, Cirkul and Air Up. And spoiler alert, it might not be positive. Let's get started. First, I have to mention the most obvious way to flavor your water, and that's simply by adding fruit like lemons, cucumber, mint, or a whole range of other flavors directly into your bottle. This works well enough, but the problem is that you ideally would have some way to strain it, so it's not a good option with most bottles. The good news is that more and more bottles are coming to market with built-in stainless steel strainers at the lid. For stainless steel bottles, EcoVessel is one brand that's been around for a while, and for glass, Mayu is a brand I've mentioned a few times on this channel. Just add your fruit or other flavorings, snap the strainer into place, and you're good to go. Some brands take the built-in strainer a step further by having a larger strainer that screws into the smaller one, which makes it a better option for tea or coffee. It's also a good option if you want your fruit to be contained instead of free floating. The first brand I tried with a larger infuser was Steepware, but honestly, I'm not too much a fan of this bottle. It did the worst by far on an insulation test, and the handle isn't anything to write home about. I found a much better option is a new brand I just came across called Vestmoon. Now, to be clear, there do appear to be other similar bottles with the same size strainer coming to market, but this is the one I've tested in person and I'm a pretty big fan. It came with both a spout and a straw lid, and I love the fact that the spout lid has a strap. If you've seen my most watched video, you already know that one of the main reasons I recommended a little known brand called FJ bottle is because of the strap. It's just a simple addition to any bottle that makes it so much easier to bring with you even if your hands are full with something else. The locking and opening mechanism on the Vestmoon takes a little getting used to, but it works well enough. And when you take off the lid, you can see the main feature, which is the built-in large infuser that screws into the small strainer cap. This is the largest infuser I've seen in a bottle yet, so you'll have plenty of volume to get creative with whichever flavors you want to add. You'll want to use it with a spout lid when you're infusing because the straw would otherwise get in the way, but for the price, this bottle seems like a great deal that works really well in most situations. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Stanley tumblers for reasons I won't get into here, but I recognize that many people love them. So if that's more your style, then you can check out bottles like this one from Femibuke. I'm probably butchering that name, and I can't say much about the company or the brand itself, but essentially it's a Stanley knockoff with a large built-in infuser for 1/3 the price. So based on the design and functionality, it looks pretty solid. Now, let's say you're in the market for an add-on infuser because you don't want to buy an entire new bottle. Let's start with ones for fruit, which generally have larger openings that don't work as well for loose leaf tea or coffee grounds. The most basic option is Fruser, which sells these single-use disposable infuser bags. Honestly, I've never tried these and I already hate them. The idea of buying single-use bags for a bottle that's intended to replace single-use bottles just doesn't make sense. A few years ago, Fruser was really the only option on the market, and that's actually why I designed Flavor Fuse Pod, because I wanted a good reusable all-around infuser. Originally, I just sold it with a splash guard style lid that fits wide mouth hydro flasks, but then I added a second lid with a handle on top that makes it a better option for drop-in infusing in any wide mouth bottle. Honestly, I like the new lid a lot more because it makes it more universally useful. I sized it as large as possible to still fit in bottles like 20-ounce hydro flasks, but that also means it can have a tough time giving you enough flavor in really large bottles like 64-ounce growlers or even 40 ounces. And if you already have a hydro flask or iron flask with a straw lid, you can try our Flavor Fuse straw variation that snaps onto the straw itself. It's even easier to use, but just keep in mind it doesn't work with as many bottles like Stanley's or Owalas because those have thicker straws. Another option for any wide mouth bottle is this infuser mold by Prodyne. Just add fruit and water to the mold, let it freeze overnight, then in the morning pop the fruit sickle into your bottle and you're good to go. Now, each of the add-on infusers I mentioned is made with either plastic or silicone, so let's look at some stainless steel ones that can be used for fruit, but are also better for tea and coffee because they have a finer mesh strainer. Our Flavor Fuse Steel is sized for wide mouth hydro flasks, and it comes in 2 sizes. It's ideally used when you're getting ready for your day because it can be difficult to add the lid on top of our infuser, but brewing tea doesn't usually take that long, so it's usually still a good option. Hydro Flask also just came out with their own tea infuser, which is unfortunate for our Flavor Fuse Steel, but hey, that's business. But for coffee or tea on the go, you have a few other things you can consider. One is Rumble Go, which is a drop-in style stainless steel infuser that's sized for wide mouth bottles like Hydro Flask. Another is Final Press, which is a portable French press you could use with theoretically any wide mouth bottle. But keep in mind it's not a drop-in style infuser. And fun fact, both of these were actually successful Kickstarters within the last few years. As someone with multiple failed Kickstarters of my own, I always love seeing people who have succeeded with products like this. And finally, let's take a look at the 2 elephants in the room that have taken social media by storm recently, Cirkul and Air Up. They each have flavor pods, but they work very differently. Cirkul's pod screws into the cap, and there's a packet of flavor that's slowly released into your water. Alternatively, Air Up's design is based on the relationship between smell and taste, and it tricks your brain into tasting flavors. Water activates the scents in the flavor pod, and then you inhale those scents while you're drinking the water, and that makes you think you're tasting it. Many people rave about these bottles, but personally, I'm not so sure. The most apparent drawback is that you can get sucked into buying replacement pods and flavor bundles, which cost you a lot more money over the long term and creates more plastic waste. And the bottles themselves are pretty poor because they don't have good handles, and maybe I'm just getting old and not with the times, but I just don't like the way that they look. Now, to be upfront, I haven't tried Air Up in person yet, so I'm willing to give it a try eventually before completely discounting that one. But I have tried Cirkul in person, and here are my thoughts. The stainless steel bottle I ordered feels cheap. The outside has what feels like a plastic coating that I just don't like the feel of, and it got marked up really easily when I was moving it in a plastic bin with a bunch of other bottles. The lid also feels cheap, which makes sense because it's meant to be disposable. The flavor tasted fine enough, but it didn't last as long as I would have expected, and at the time they had a moving animation of Mr. Beast on their website that will haunt my dreams for years to come. Just know that with Cirkul, you're essentially drinking fruit-flavored diet soda without carbonation. Now, if you're set on buying one of these, keep in mind that both Cirkul and Air Up seem to sell more through their own websites. Just be aware of that in case you look on Amazon. The Cirkul listings I saw were marked as generic, which means they might not actually be sold directly by Cirkul. And I didn't see a real listing for Air Up. Instead, I just saw these listings from other companies who are being sneaky by calling their bottles names like Air Water Up Bottle to trick Amazon's search results while still technically being legal. So that's it. Here's a link to our most viewed video, which is almost up to 150,000 views, which is kind of insane. Let me know if I missed any other good infuser options. Thanks for watching and happy hydrating.